The rain fell on the city of Crestwood with a relentless, gray determination mirroring the storm in Leo's heart. At 22, Leo was drowning. His final year of engineering school was a mountain of stress, but it was the specter of his family's debts that truly threatened to pull him under. His father's failed business had left a chasm of financial ruin, and Leo, as the eldest, felt the weight of every single bill. He sat in a dimly lit cafe, staring at a spreadsheet on his laptop, the numbers a blur of red and despair. A single notification broke his trance in email from an unknown sender, Eleanor Blackwood. The message was brief and direct. Mr. Vance, I am aware of your circumstances. I can offer a solution. Meet me at the grandiose hotel, penthouse suite, tomorrow at 7 p.m. Do not be late. Leo's first instinct was to delete it. It reeked of a scam. But the name Eleanor Blackwood was legendary in Crestwood. She was a reclusive, immensely wealthy widow, a figure of local myth. Curiosity and a desperate, flickering hope made him type a single-word reply, okay, the following evening. Leo stood outside the opulent doors of the penthouse suite, his best thrift store jacket feeling shabby and thin. He was admitted by a silent butler into a room of breathtaking luxury. And there, seated on a velvet chaise lounge, was Eleanor Blackwood. She was not the frail old woman he had vaguely imagined. At 70, she was sharp, her posture ramrod straight, her silver hair coiffed perfectly, and her eyes held an intelligence that felt like it could see right through him. Leon Vance, she said, her voice a low, cultured tremor that commanded the room. Sit, you are undoubtedly wondering why you are here. Leo sat gingerly on the edge of a plush armchair. I am Mrs. Blackwood. Your email was cryptic. I prefer efficient. She corrected him smoothly. I know about your father's debts. I know about your mother's medical bills. I know you are one missed scholarship payment away from dropping out. I am here to make all of that disappear. Leo's heart hammered against his ribs. Why would you do that? Eleanor took a slow sip from a crystal glass. I am offering you a business proposition. Leo, a contract of sorts. I require a husband. The words hung in the air, surreal and heavy. Leo let out a short, disbelieving laugh. I'm sorry, a what? You heard me. I need a young, presentable husband. This is not a matter of romance or sentiment. It is a matter of legacy and perception. My late husband's family is ... circling. A marriage, even a paper one, strengthens my legal and social standing. It silences the vultures. She set her glass down with a definitive click. In return, I will immediately clear all your debts, ensure your mother receives the best care, and fund your education to its completion. You will want for nothing materially. The contract and the conscience. Leo felt the world tilt. It was insane. It was humiliating. It was also the only lifeline he had seen in years. You're serious, he whispered. Deadly, she replied, her gaze unwavering. You will live here, in this suite. You will accompany me to necessary functions. You will play the part. In private, we will lead entirely separate lives. The contract will be for 1 year, after which we will dissolve the marriage, and you will walk away with a generous severance package, free and clear. That night, Leo didn't sleep. He paced his tiny, damp apartment, the ghost of Eleanor's offer haunting him. He thought of his mother's tired smile, at the collection notices piling up, of the dream of graduating that seemed to slip further away each day. Pride warred with desperation. By sunrise, pride had lost. He sent the email. I accept your terms. The wedding was a cold, clinical affair in a judge's chamber. Leo wore a suit Eleanor had bought for him. He repeated the vows, his voice hollow. Eleanor did the same, her tone brisk and businesslike. When the judge pronounced them man and wife, he turned to him, and for a fleeting second, he saw something unreadable in her eyes, not triumph, not coldness, but a deep, profound sadness. It was gone in an instant, replaced by her usual steely composure. Welcome to your new life, Mr. Blackwood, she said. The first glimpse of a mystery. His new room in the penthouse was larger than his entire apartment, filled with art and fine furniture. It felt like a museum, beautiful but utterly soulless. The first few days were a study in surrealism. He was served meals by staff who never made eye contact. He had access to limitless funds, yet felt like a prisoner in a golden cage. Eleanor was cordial but distant, their interactions scripted and brief. A week after the wedding, Leo was exploring the vast library, running his fingers over the leather-bound spines when a small, ornately carved wooden box on a high shelf caught his eye. It was out of place, tucked away as if hidden. Driven by a curiosity he couldn't explain, he pulled it down. It was locked. His engineering mind kicked in, and using a paperclip from a desk, he managed to jimmy the simple lock dot inside. There were no jewels or stacks of cash. There was only a single, faded photograph and a stack of letters tied with a silk ribbon. The photograph showed a young, vibrant Eleanor, her face radiant with laughter, her arm linked with a handsome, smiling man who was not her late husband, Howard Blackwood. The letters were love letters filled with passionate, poetic prose, signed by a man named Daniel. Leo's blood ran cold as he read the last letter. It spoke of a plan, of running away together, of a love that could not be denied. The final line was seared into his mind. My dearest Eleanor, by the time you read this, I will have confronted Howard. I will make him see reason. He cannot keep us apart. Meet me at the old mill tonight. Forever yours, Daniel. The date on the letter was the day before Daniel had vanished. According to a small, yellowed newspaper clipping tucked beneath the letters that simply reported a local man, Daniel Miller, as missing, presumed dead. Howard Blackwood had publicly mourned the loss of his wife's friend. Leo stood frozen, the letters trembling in his hand. The poised, calculating woman he had married had a secret history of passionate, star-crossed love. And the official story of her late husband's benevolent nature suddenly seemed like a grotesque lie. The transaction he had entered was no longer just a business deal. He was now living in the aftermath of a decades-old tragedy, and he had a terrible, chilling feeling that he had just stumbled upon the reason for it all. The gilded cage now felt dangerously like a crime scene. Confronting the past, Leo's hands trembled as he carefully placed the letters back into the ornate box, his mind reeling. The image of a young, laughing Eleanor, so different from the ice queen he knew, was burned into his mind. The man in the photograph, Daniel, had a kind, open face. He looked nothing like the stern, powerful Howard Blackwood whose portrait hung in the main hall. The official story of a benevolent widow and a tragic loss was crumbling, replaced by a narrative of forbidden love and a sinister disappearance. He had to know more. Over the next few days, Leo became a ghost in the penthouse, his engineering focus redirected towards unraveling the mystery. He used his laptop to dig into public records, finding the old newspaper archives. The reports on Daniel Miller's disappearance were sparse, almost suspiciously so. He was a poet, an artist, from a family with no social standing. The investigation had been quietly closed, citing a lack of evidence and suggesting he had simply left town. But the love letter spoke of a confrontation with Howard. Daniel wouldn't have just left. Eleanor, meanwhile, seemed to sense a shift in him. Her sharp eyes would linger on him during their silent, formal dinners. You seem preoccupied, Leo, she remarked one evening, her voice cutting through the clink of silverware. Is the reality of our arrangement beginning to wear on you? A forged connection, it's a lot to adjust to, Leo replied carefully, meeting her gaze. He saw not just calculation there, but a deep, weary loneliness. He decided to take a risk. This house, it holds a lot of history, doesn't it? It must be lonely, surrounded by so many memories. Eleanor's fork stilled. She studied him, her expression unreadable. Memories are a luxury I cannot afford. They are anchors to a past that is best forgotten. But her voice lacked its usual conviction. For a fleeting moment, the formidable Eleanor Blackwood looked like a lost, tired old woman. This small crack in her armor was all Leo needed. He began talking to her, not as a business partner, but as a person. He spoke of his own family's struggles, his father's failed dreams, his mother's resilience. He shared his fears and his hopes. Slowly, cautiously, Eleanor began to reciprocate. She spoke of her youth, of a time filled with music and art, carefully avoiding any mention of Daniel or Howard. They developed a fragile, unexpected camaraderie. Leo realized with a jolt that he was no longer just playing a part. He genuinely cared for this complicated, wounded woman. The key to the truth's breakthrough came not from digging online, but from a casual conversation with the building's elderly doorman, Arthur, who had worked there for 40 years. Leo brought him a coffee one afternoon, and they got to talking about the old days. Mr. Blackwood, he was a forceful man, Arthur said, shaking his head. The night that young poet fellow vanished, there was a terrible row-up in the penthouse. Shouting, things breaking, Mr. Blackwood stormed out, his face like thunder. Mrs. Blackwood, she was never the same after that. The light in her just went out. Leo's heart hammered. Did anyone ever find out what happened to Daniel? Arthur leaned closer, lowering his voice. There were whispers. Mr. Blackwood had connections, see. The police asked their questions, but the case went cold faster than a winter's morning. Everyone was paid off, scared off. But I always believed the old gardener, old Ben. He said he saw Mr. Blackwood down by the old mill that night, the one they tore down years ago to build the new canal. He was there alone, his clothes covered in mud. That was the final piece. The love letter had mentioned the old mill. Howard had been there. Leo now had a location and a motive. Howard Blackwood, in a fit of jealous rage, had likely killed Daniel and used his wealth and influence to cover it up. Eleanor had lived for decades knowing this terrible secret, trapped in a marriage with her lover's murderer. Her entire life had been a performance to protect herself and the legacy she was forced to uphold. Her proposal to Leo wasn't just about silencing vultures. It was about finally finding someone who could help her unearth the truth she had buried for a lifetime. The business proposition was a lie. She needed an ally. She needed a redemption she never thought she deserved. The confession armed with the doorman's testimony and the damning love letters, Leo knew the time for subtlety was over. He waited for Eleanor in the library, the wooden box placed on the table between them. When she entered, her eyes immediately fell upon it, and all the color drained from her face. The formidable facade shattered completely. You know, she whispered, her voice a dry leaf in the wind. It wasn't a question. I know about Daniel, Leo said softly, without accusation. I know about the confrontation. I know Howard was at the mill that night. You don't have to carry this alone anymore, Eleanor. The story poured out of her then, a torrent of pain held back for decades. She spoke of her passionate, secret love for Daniel, a love her family and Howard deemed unsuitable. Howard had found Daniel's letters. He confronted her, and in a rage, he went to meet Daniel at their secret spot. He came back that night, Eleanor said, her eyes staring into a horrible past. His knuckles were bleeding. There was mud on his trousers. He told me Daniel was gone, that he would never trouble me again. He said if I ever spoke a word of it, he would destroy my family, and sure they ended up in the gutter. He made me his prisoner in this gilded tomb. Every painting, every piece of jewelry, every dollar was a monument to my silence. I married my nightmare to protect my family from ruin, just as you married me to protect yours. Tears streamed down her lined cheeks. For 40 years, I have lived with his ghost. For 40 years, I have been too much of a coward to seek justice for the only man I ever loved. The path to justice. Leo reached across the table and took her frail, trembling hand. You're not a coward. You survived. But you don't have to be silent anymore. With Leo's steadfast support, Eleanor contacted a trusted, discreet lawyer. They presented the evidence, the letters, Arthur's signed testimony, and Eleanor's own devastating account. The lawyer advised that while a criminal case against a dead man was impossible, they could file a civil suit to have the official record of Daniel's disappearance amended and to publicly expose Howard Blackwood's actions. More importantly, they could give Daniel's remaining family, a niece living in another state, the closure they had been denied for a lifetime the day the legal documents were filed. A profound change came over Eleanor. The weight of 4 decades seemed to lift from her shoulders. The sharp, cold edge in her demeanor softened, replaced by a gentle, weary grace. She looked at Leo not as an employee or a pawn, but as a son. "You gave me my life back," she told him, her voice thick with emotion. You saw the person behind the prison walls. A new beginning 1-year mark of their marriage contract arrived. Leo's family's debts were gone, his future secure. He stood with Eleanor in the same library where their real relationship had begun. "The contract is fulfilled," Eleanor said. "You are free to go, Leo. The severance package is yours." As promised, Leo smiled, shaking his head. "I don't want the severance package, Eleanor." She looked at him, confused. "The money never really mattered in the end," he said. "What I gained was far more valuable. I found a friend. I found purpose. Let me say, not as your husband, but as your family. Let me help you truly live the rest of your life." Tears welled in Eleanor's eyes once more, but this time they were tears of joy. She nodded, unable to speak. Leo did not walk away from the gilded cage. He transformed it into a home. He used his engineering skills to help manage Eleanor's philanthropic ventures, focusing on supporting aspiring artists and poets, a living tribute to Daniel's memory. He watched as Eleanor, freed from her past, finally embraced the world, her laughter once again echoing through the halls of the penthouse. A sound long forgotten but never truly lost. He had entered the marriage seeking a financial solution, but he found a fractured soul to mend. And in helping her heal, he unknowingly healed the broken parts of himself. The broke college boy and the millionaire widow had saved each other, proving that the most valuable contracts are not written on paper, but are etched on the human heart. The unbreakable bond 5 years later. The penthouse was no longer a gilded cage, but a home filled with light and life. Leo, now a successful engineer, stood on the balcony, not as a prisoner of a contract, but as a son honoring a mother. The transformation in Eleanor had been the most beautiful project of his life. The sharp, cold widow was gone, replaced by a warm, gracious woman who finally allowed herself to live. She became a prolific patron of the arts, establishing the Daniel Miller Foundation, which provided grants to young poets and artists, ensuring her first love spirit lived on through their work. Leo had never left. The severance package remained untouched in a bank account, a relic of a life he no longer recognized. His own success was built on the stability Eleanor's initial offer had provided, but his true wealth was the family he had found in her. They were a peculiar pair, the young engineer and the elderly socialite, but their bond, forged in shared secrets and mutual salvation, was unbreakable. The final gift then, when it came, was peaceful. Eleanor passed away in her sleep, a faint, serene smile on her face, a world away from the tormented woman Leo had first met. The weight of a lifetime of silence had finally been lifted. Grief washed over Leo, but it was a clean, honest sorrow. Not one burdened by regret. A week after the quiet funeral, Eleanor's lawyer summoned Leo. He expected to discuss the will, the dispersal of the vast Blackwood estate. The lawyer, an older man who had known Eleanor for decades, slid a single, thick envelope across the polished mahogany desk. "She asked me to give this to you personally, Leo." She called it her final confession, the ultimate revelation. Puzzled and a little apprehensive, Leo opened the envelope. Inside was a letter in Eleanor's elegant, familiar handwriting. "My dearest Leo, if you are reading this, then I have finally found my peace. Please do not mourn me for long. You gave me more in our few years as a family than I had in all the decades that came before. There is one final truth I must share, a secret I kept even from you. I did not marry you only to find an ally against Howard's ghost or to clear Daniel's name. I married you because I knew your father." Leo's breath caught in his throat. His heart began to pound. His name was Daniel Miller. The world tilted. Leo gripped the edge of the desk, the words swimming before his eyes. "The child I carried, the one the world believed was Howard's, was Daniel's. I gave him up for adoption to protect him from Howard's wrath, a pain that nearly destroyed me. I spent a fortune and decades searching for him in secret. I found him, a kind man named Michael Vance, living a simple, happy life. He was your father. Leo. Tears streamed down Leo's face, hot and unchecked. The debts, the struggles, his father's gentle spirit that never quite fit in a world of business, it all made a terrible, beautiful sense. Howard discovered my search before I could reveal myself to Michael. He ruined him financially, ensuring he would never rise high enough to cross paths with our world. My punishment for seeking my son was to witness his suffering from afar, unable to intervene. When Michael passed and I saw you, my grandson, drowning in the debts Howard had created, I knew it was my chance. Not for revenge, but for redemption. Not to settle a score, but to keep my promise to a son I could never hold, by saving the grandson I could. You are not a stranger I plucked from obscurity. Leo, you are my blood. You are my legacy. The entire estate is yours, not as a payment, but as your birthright. Build a beautiful life. Be happy. With all my love, your grandmother. Eleanor knew Don Leo sat in the silent office for a long time, the letter held gently in his hands. The shocking revelation rewrote his entire history. He wasn't a broke college boy who got lucky. He was a lost heir who had found his way home. The marriage wasn't a business deal. It was a grandmother's desperate, ingenious act to reclaim her family and right a lifelong wrong. He walked out of the lawyer's office and into the sunlight, the weight of the past replaced by the profound peace of truth. He looked up at the sky, no longer gray, but a brilliant, endless blue. He had set out to save his family from debt and had ended up uncovering the very roots of his own soul. The story that began with a shocking proposal ended with the quiet, powerful revelation that the greatest fortune of all was not money, but the unbreakable, enduring bond of family, found in the most unexpected of places.